What would you do if your kid came to you and told you that every night a little girl with a scary face comes to the window and begs you to go outside and to play with her? This mom's daughter started mentioning a creepy little girl outside of her window. At first, she didn't know that much about it, but then as more details started to come out, things got really weird. Her daughter came to her one night and she said, "Mommy, the little girl with the really scary face is back. She's telling me I have to come outside, but I know I'm not allowed." This is absolute nightmare fuel, but it gets even worse. The little girl starts banging on the window at night, saying, "You have to come outside right now. Don't tell your mommy, just come out." And at this point, the mom is really freaked out, but she has to act fast. So she tells her daughter, next time she comes, tell her to go away. Tell her you never want to see her again. And so a week later, she checks in. She's like, "Hey, whatever happened to that little girl?" And her daughter just like really casually goes, "Oh, I told her to go away and to never come back. And she told me that when someone says that, she has to listen. So she left." No, because what do you mean she has to listen? So was she a ghost? Was she a demon? Was she something else? Either way, I would be breaking my lease immediately. Come over here for longer freaky videos.
This family vanished inside their own home. This is the disturbing disappearance of the Sanchez family. In the hills of Oaxaca, Mexico, there's a house no one dares to enter. The Sanchez family had vanished overnight. No bodies, no trace of mom and dad, and no nothing. When police entered the home, they found dinner still hot on the table, the stove was on, but there wasn't any sign of the family. All the family's shoes were actually in the living room. However, they did find some disturbing writing in red letters. It said, "Nos llevó el mismo el que se llevó a los del rancho," meaning the same ones that took the people from the ranch took us as well. People believe that the father had discovered bones wrapped in cloth beneath the surface of the house during some home renovations. After that night, the dogs would howl non-stop, the air was thick, and the family had just disappeared. The case was completely closed. No leads, no clues, no nothing. Just pure silence. Some people say that if you pass by at night, you can hear children crying and laughing. And the Sanchez family was never found.
Terrifying truth of the rat children of Pakistan. Outside the Shahdola shrine in the Punjabi city of Gujarat, dozens of young children with deformed heads are seen begging. These children have distinctive shrunken heads and learning disabilities. Although this can be due to a genetic condition called microcephaly, this is not genetic. These children have been subjected to artificial microcephaly, where iron bands were placed on their skull. It prevents the normal growth of the skull and brain. Believed to be over 10,000 rat children in Pakistan, controlled by a mafia of beggars all over the country.
Not so fun facts to completely ruin your day. Tarantulas are able to swim. The global rate for people washing their hands after using the restroom is just under 20%. It's very common for people to have the urge to poop just before having a heart attack. People have different smells depending on if they're awake or asleep.
When you finish this video, you're going to Google two words. In 2014, two Dutch college students were staying in Panama when they decided to take their host family's dog out for a walk. The dog returned, but the girls didn't. After 10 weeks without any leads, a local woman turned in a blue backpack that contained the girls' cell phones and their camera. Using their call log, they were able to determine that the girls would attempt to reach emergency services 77 times, all unsuccessful, starting just hours into their trip. It was also determined that 5 days after those 77 calls, somebody tried unsuccessfully several times to unlock the girls' phones. But the most distressing thing is what was found on the camera. The first set was taken on the day they left and they were totally normal. The second set was taken in the middle of the night over a week after they had left, and it showed all their belongings neatly laid out on a rock, and it showed one of the girls who appeared to be hurt. They found their remains spread out around the area where the backpack was found, and some of their bones appeared to have been bleached. There is still no official cause of death or explanation as to what happened.
Facts that will definitely make your skin crawl, part 2. There is more of a chance of you finding a dead body underneath your bed than actually finding it in the garbage. If you ever plug your nose during a sneeze, you can actually rupture a blood vessel in your neck or your brain and it'll cause you to bleed to death. The electric chair was actually invented by a dentist. If a black cat looks at you and runs, it usually means something is about to happen to you, usually being pretty bad.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 22. In the 18th century, you could bring your cat or dog to the London Zoo and actually pay your admission by feeding it to the lions. Bus seats are specifically designed so you can't tell how dirty they really are. When an octopus reproduces, it removes its penis and throws it at the female so she can impregnate herself, and then he grows back another one. Oysters are actually alive when they're served. They don't die until you eat them. In Australia, there's a plant called the gimbi, which has such a severe sting that when horses brush up against it, they actually throw themselves off a cliff because they would rather die than experience the pain. Live chat support agents can see what you type before they send it so they can reply quicker. Spider rain, yes, you heard me right, is a real and naturally occurring phenomenon.
Does a photo like this make you feel uncomfortable? Or something like this? This phenomenon is known as the uncanny valley. Introduced by Masahiro Mori in the 1970s, the uncanny valley refers to a phenomenon where our brains can register that something is very close to human, but we're also aware that something's not quite right. It's the in-between, where we can process that something looks like a person, but it's not a person, and it causes feelings of distress. Believed to be an evolutionary mechanism, which is also not exclusive to just humans, the uncanny valley is where we perceive these things to be a threat or not of us, and it can cause feelings of panic. One of the most well-known modern examples of this was actually an early test screening of Shrek in 2000, where Fiona was rendered as very hyper-realistic. So realistic that it surpassed the threshold of comfort in cartoon and moved into the uncanny valley. Children actually became so panicked at this screening, they were reported to be crying at the movie anytime she came on the screen. The entire film had to be halted and she was re-rendered. I'm not sure if this was the actual earliest version of Fiona that made it to the screening, but to put this in context, the one that made it to worldwide theaters is right above. But I did happen to find this monster from some of the early test footage of Shrek. The uncanny valley is still a widely unstudied phenomenon, but it continues to become more and more pervasive in entertainment as well as our modern animation.
These are the most bone-chilling photos on the internet, part 2. This is the youngest girl to ever give birth. Her name is Lina Medina. She gave birth at just 5 years old. The authorities suspected that her father raped her, but due to lack of evidence, he was never convicted. To this day, nobody knows how the young girl got pregnant, and is still a great mystery. This photograph looks like a normal photo, right? But it's not. The woman in this photo is actually dead, and the husband took the photo 2 days after she passed away. There's no word or evidence on what caused this woman's death, but many suspect that it was her own husband who killed her. This photo right here is captured on a boy's GoPro. Every night he would wake up to whispering and the feeling of somebody touching him. So he decided to wear a GoPro before bed one night. And this is what he saw on it in the morning. It appears to be a ghostly woman just staring and screaming into the camera. The boy showed the footage to his mother, and the next day they immediately moved out of the house.
The terrifying truth of the rat children of Pakistan. Outside the Shahdola shrine in the Punjabi city of Gujarat, dozens of young children with deformed heads are seen begging. These children have distinctive shrunken heads and learning disabilities. Although this can be due to a genetic condition called microcephaly, this is not genetic. These children have been subjected to artificial microcephaly, where iron bands were placed on their skull. It prevents the normal growth of the skull and brain. Believed to be over 10,000 rat children in Pakistan, controlled by a mafia of beggars all over the country.
Be careful when looking at old pictures, you might see the man with the upside down face in one. Click the plus, drop a like, tag a friend, save yourself. The upside down man is one of the meanest and the scariest monsters alive. He personally feeds off of death and fear, so be careful. Behind me, as you see him in this tragic car accident. Supposedly this picture is from the 1960s, and this is when he started to appear. He himself cannot make the events tragic, but he can make them 10 times worse. By making simple arguments turn violent. My question to you guys is, have you looked at old pictures?
This is part 2 on what happened to Jaylen Candelario. When police arrived at the house, they found Jaylen in a shocking condition. She was lying in a urine and feces-soiled playpen, she had sunken and dry eyes, she had dry and cracked lips, and she also had fecal matter inside her mouth and underneath her fingernails. Surprisingly, however, Jaylen's clothes were completely clean, which indicated to police that Crystal had tried to clean her up to mask what she had done. Despite doing that, nothing would be able to mask the horrific state that Jaylen was found in. During her interview with police, Crystal said that Jaylen had been sick all week long and that when she woke up that day, she discovered that Jaylen was unresponsive and that she realized that her daughter looked dehydrated, which then prompted her to call 911 right away, which, as we know, was a complete lie because she was on vacation that entire week. Suspicious of her story, the police took her to the homicide unit for further questioning. In the second interview, she said that she did actually leave earlier that week to go work as an Uber driver in Detroit. Police were like, okay, why did you have to go be an Uber driver in Detroit? And she was like, oh, well, my friend lived there, so I wanted to go visit my friend and also work at the same time. So she admitted to leaving to Michigan, but never said anything about Puerto Rico. Nothing Crystal was telling the police made any sense, so they decided to further investigate, and that's when they discovered that she actually left to Puerto Rico for 10 days. With this, Crystal was arrested, and then on February 22nd, 2024, she pled guilty to aggravated murder and endangering children as part of a plea deal. During her sentencing, the defense team tried to make it seem like this was an act of insanity. They claimed that she was suffering from mental health issues and that she just wasn't thinking straight. The prosecution immediately tore down this narrative. They were like, no, she was sane enough to buy a plane ticket, to go through security at the airport, to get on the plane, get to the hotel, take pictures, edit the photos, post them on Facebook, write captions. Like, she was clearly sane during this time. Jaylen's cause of death was also revealed during this time, and it revealed that Jaylen died to starvation and severe dehydration. The medical examiner stated that Jaylen had actually tried to eat her own in order to survive. Now, before hearing her sentence, Crystal expressed how sorry she was, how she made a big mistake, but that she knows that God and her daughter have forgiven her. She said that she was dealing with a lot of mental health issues at this time and that she hopes to reunite with Jaylen one day. In the end, Crystal was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge said that Crystal defied one of the most basic human responsibilities and committed the ultimate act of betrayal against her daughter. What Crystal did is just truly evil, and the fact that she says that she knows Jaylen forgives her is just insane. My thoughts and prayers go out to the family. This is just so upsetting, and I just truly hope that Jaylen is resting in peace.
Today I googled which country has produced the most serial killers. And honestly, number 1 is insane. Right, in at number 5 is Italy. They have produced 97 serial killers. Finally getting mentioned in one of my lists, I see you comment section, is Canada at number 4 with 106. That's a staggering 0.29 per 100,000 people. Now number 3 is an unfortunate regular on all of my lists, South Africa with 117 murderous individuals. The runner-up is England with 166, with the most notable being the infamous Angel Maker. She killed almost 400 babies in the 19th century. I told you number 1 was insane, and I didn't lie because USA obliterates this list. They have a staggering 3,204 known serial killers, which is approximately 19 times more than the second highest. That means almost 1 in every 100,000 people is a serial killer in the US.
This has to be one of the creepiest mugshots I've ever seen, and the story behind it is pretty disturbing. This is the man in the mugshot, Christopher Queen. At the time of his arrest, he was 48 years old and living in Pennsylvania. So on election day in 2018, Christopher entered a polling center in Pennsylvania planning on casting a vote. But when he arrived to vote, he was told that he couldn't because he wasn't registered. Poll workers who were working that day even stated that they heard Christopher mention that he was getting paid $100 to come vote, which obviously was not true. But when Christopher arrived, like I said before, he wasn't registered to vote in Washington County, the county he was in. When the workers told him that he couldn't vote, they noticed that Christopher began to shake uncontrollably and became filled with some sort of a rage. He then made the verbal threat that he was going to come back and shoot up the place, and after that, he was quickly put into handcuffs. I don't know the full story behind why he chose to exhibit this expression in his mugshot, but they caught him before he could enact any sort of violence, and yeah, he was arrested. It's worth noting as well that in other news reports that surfaced after this threat was made, Christopher is seen smiling in the same type of manner. Luckily though, authorities were able to arrest Christopher and put him in custody that day before he could cause any violence.
This is a true horrifying story about the most dangerous game to play. And no, it is not the Ouija board. This game is called the Coroner's Game. People sent me a podcast video of two guys explaining how it's done. I've heard of this game a while ago, but since people are talking about it now, I'd love to step in. I genuinely warn you from playing this game, because it is extremely dangerous whether it was done right or wrong, and it does involve summoning an evil presence. Even if I didn't explain to you guys how it's done, you guys are probably gonna Google it either ways. The Corners game is a summoning ritual. In Islam, it is equivalent to practicing black magic. You need 4 participants, no additional players are allowed in the room. A room with 4 corners, no more, no less. All the lights in the room must be switched off. All players must enter the room one by one, speaking their name out loud 3 times. One principal is appointed as the speaker. The speaker stays in the middle of the room, and the remaining 3 players must pick a corner each and face the wall. The door should be shut, and when everyone is inside, no one is allowed to speak. When everyone is in position, the speaker counts to 3. And on 3, all participants must rotate clockwise to the next corner. Now there are 4 other procedures that I don't wish to explain further. But throughout the game, remember, there's always one empty corner. Now people say that one of the principals may disappear. But one thing for sure, an entity in the shape of a figure will appear in one of the corners. There is an emergency procedure of calling your name backwards, but I don't know if that will avoid getting you injured. A group of guys from Japan have played this game. No one disappeared in thin air after the game was done. However, one of the players never seemed the same after playing this game. During their 3rd rotation, they saw a figure move in one of the empty corners. The figure is a jinn, and jinns feed off from empty corners. That is what we know of them in Islam. In households, jinns camp in corners, ceilings, or even toilets. The player that is in most fear will be possessed. And the player that was possessed from playing this game passed away a couple of years later. They were all young men in their late 20s. Sometimes dangerous rituals are commercially sold as games, such as the Ouija board. But they are just dangerous portals. You are literally creating a portal from the jinn world to your own room by playing such games. I didn't even explain how the game is done. If you Google the rest of the procedures, that's your responsibility. Stay away.
Do not read this poem out loud unless you want to be cursed. Tomino's Hell is a poem that was written in 1919 and is cursed. This poem talks about Tomino and all the horrible stuff he endured. His parents were very strict with him and locked him in a cellar without any food as a form of punishment. As he's in that dark cellar all alone with no food, he ends up passing away. Because of that, Tomino's spirit is said to haunt this poem. You must never read this poem out loud or you will feel the same feelings as Tomino, extreme hopelessness and despair. Aside from that, you can experience illnesses, accidents, or even death. In 1974, a movie was produced to be based off of this poem. Once the movie came out, the director ended up passing away 2 years later, even though he was pretty healthy. There's another instance with this girl who was in college and she was dared by her friends to read the poem out loud and she unexpectedly died a week later. Could this all just be a coincidence or is this poem actually cursed? If you really want to read this poem, you can read it in your head and be safe. Unless you're brave enough to read it out loud, but don't say I didn't warn you.
Stephen Stearns, the man accused of killing Madeline Soto, told his dad in a jailhouse phone call that he was surprised by the murder charge. A phone call between Stearns and his parents from May was released, and in it, Stearns' dad asks him about the charges he is facing. He says he was not expecting the charges. When his father asked, "So you got blindsided by that?" referencing the murder charge, Stearns said, "Yeah, obviously, you know it's not true. You know I never would have wanted her gone for any reason. So, you know, premeditated first degree is kind of a gut punch," which is a very interesting way to say it, not just saying like I never killed her, but saying wouldn't have wanted her gone. So not only getting the murder charge, but getting a premeditated first degree murder charge hurts even more. And then his father said, "Yeah, I wish there was a way that, you know, you and I can have a conversation.
all of us could have a conversation to understand what's taking place, how this came about, how you were right here, because it would help us better understand the situation, because we're just rather lost for understanding how this all came about. I mean, we're just totally baffled. And they're kind of discussing the other things Stearns has been charged with, which includes 60 counts of charges related to child SA and CSAM. And Stearns said, I didn't start it. And then his father said, didn't start it, but you participated in it, which is just as bad as not starting it. When the transcripts from this phone call were released, more documents were also released. And in those, the state attorney's office revealed that they have evidence that Stearns was essaying Madeline when she was just 8 years old. She was 13 at the time of the murder. For now, Stearns remains in custody and has been charged with 60 counts of child SA and CSAM and of first-degree murder.
This mother planned the murder of her sons for a week. On May 2nd, 2022, 38-year-old Trin Nguyen shot her 9-year-old and her 13-year-old son in their beds in their home in Pennsylvania. That day, police was called by Trin's neighbor. The man told police that Trin had approached him and handed him a box of photos and asked him to give the box to her ex-husband, who he worked with. She then pointed a gun at his face and pulled the trigger twice. However, the gun did not fire. He then quickly disarmed Trin and she fled the area in her car. He then told police that Trin had 2 children, so they searched the home and found both boys in critical condition from gunshot wounds to their head. Later that day, police found Trin at a church parking lot in her car. Police found heroin and a note in Trin's car that was dated a week earlier stating what to do with her and her son's ashes. They also noticed that Trin tried to end her life by consuming large amounts of narcotics. TJ and Nelson were on life support until they passed away the following Friday. Investigators still haven't found a motive for the shooting, but investigators did discover documents showing that Trin was going to be evicted from her home that was owned by her ex-sister-in-law, and she owed about $11,000 in rent.
His life was taken after accidentally entering the wrong home. On August 26th of this year, just before 2 a.m., officers were sent to a home on South Holly Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Those officers were called for a suspected home burglary. As officers were responding, the emergency call was then upgraded to a shots fired call. The officers found a victim on the front porch, deceased with a gunshot wound to his upper body. The victim was identified as 20-year-old Nicholas Anthony Donofrio. Nicholas actually lived on the same street where the shooting happened, and he just accidentally entered the wrong home when he was shot. The police said that the shooter was a man who lived at the home, but they were not going to release his name since he was not going to be charged in this case. Nicholas had graduated high school in 2021 in Madison, Connecticut. The shooting came in less than 72 hours after the university's fall semester classes had just begun.
What is the craziest thing that someone's confessed to on their deathbed? Well, a deathbed confession made this year solved a 20-year-old cold case. And this is coming from the Heart Starts Pounding podcast episode that's all about cold cases that were solved this year. So this year in West Virginia, a man named Larry Webb was dying. And before he died, he called a nurse over and said he needed to get it off his chest that he killed a woman and her daughter back in 2000. It turns out that back then, a woman named Susan Carter and her 10-year-old daughter Alex were living with Larry while Susan was in a custody battle with Alex's father. And one day they just disappeared, but because they were together when they disappeared, police assumed that Susan just ran away with her daughter. But Larry confirmed that that's not what happened. The story he gave on his deathbed is that one day he came home to see that Susan was stealing money from him, and so he shot her. And then panicking, he wanted to get rid of all the witnesses, and that included Alex, her daughter. And to me, the craziest thing in all of this is that Larry had really bad dementia, so when he gave this confession, they weren't really convinced that it was true. But the day after he died, both of their remains were found in his backyard. If you want to hear more on that story and other cold cases that were solved this year, check out the Cold Cases That Were Solved This Year episode of the Heart Starts Pounding podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
These are the worst of the worst videos on the internet explained, and today we're talking about the pitbull video. The video that I'm about to explain is extremely graphic, and I don't recommend searching for it. This is a cartel execution, and the video begins with the victim lying on his back on the ground, and 2 men are holding his legs open. He's being restrained. And in total, there are 5 cartel members, 1 victim, and also 2 pitbull dogs. Apparently, this is the victim's punishment for allegedly doing something with a kid or to a kid. The victim is naked, and at the start of the video, the dog has done most of the work. The dog already ripped the man's privates off, and it's just a bloody mess. The dog continues to rip pieces of flesh off where the victim's privates used to be, and the victim is being held down and he is also being gagged so he can't scream. But sometimes the gag came loose, and at that point you can hear the man scream in absolute pain. The victim was even talking, but I couldn't translate it, but that means he was completely conscious during this, which I can't even imagine the pain. As a man, this might be one of the worst videos out there. Funky Town is bad, Ghost Rider is bad, but as a man, I can't imagine anything more painful than a pitbull ripping your junk off while you're still alive. Not many people mention this video with the other disturbing ones, but it's definitely up there. There's not any information about the victim after the video. I don't know if he died, but it's safe to assume he did. He lost a lot of blood, and if a dog eats your privates, you will most likely get an infection and die from it. All in all, this video is very graphic, very real, and very disturbing. Please do yourself a favor and never go searching for this video, especially if you're a man.